The Legend of Zelda series is one of the most enduring and iconic franchises in gaming history. From its origins on the NES as an innovative, open-world game that encouraged exploration, puzzle solving, and dungeon crawling, the series continued to grow with each successive new Nintendo console, incorporating loads of new elements that would go on to shape the gaming landscape, and cementing its legacy forever. Even into the modern era on the Nintendo Switch, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the series continues to push the envelope and has really become the gold standard of action-adventure games. My personal history with the series started as a young child when I first picked up my cousin's original Game Boy and played The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Although quite a challenging game for a 7 or 8-year-old, nevertheless, the game captivated me with its art style, interesting story, and unique gameplay. It wasn't until a few years later, however, that I would play in close succession both A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo and Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. These games completely blew my mind as a kid, and really let my imagination run wild in Hyrule. With their epic stories, challenging dungeons, and incredible music, the Zelda games really opened my eyes to how grand scale a video game could be. In this video, let's have a look at what I personally believe to be the 10 best games in the Legend of Zelda series. Number 10. The Minish Cap. Being the most recent game in the series I have actually played through on this channel, the Minish Cap was a game that I actually had attempted to play many years ago, but for whatever reason didn't follow through with. However, it was a really fun game overall, though not without its faults. The sprite work and art style are nice on the Game Boy Advance, with expressive sprites, colorful environments, and some interesting puzzles and dungeons. Some of the new power-ups like the Mole Mitts, the Pegasus Boots, and the Gust Jar can be quite fun to use, and the Minish form is a cool little feature that allows Link to shrink down in size, to solve puzzles and explore new areas. The Kinstones, however, are a bit frustrating at times, and offer no real rewards for the most part. Overall, a really unique Zelda title, and while a bit flawed, still worthy of mention. Number 9. The Legend of Zelda. The game that started it all. The first Legend of Zelda of course had to make the list, if only for the fact that it launched one of the greatest franchises in all of gaming. This game innovated in so many ways, with its non-linear exploration, dungeons to explore, and puzzle solving. Everything from the overworld map to the save feature was innovative with this game, and stuff like the legendary overworld theme and even the opening line by the old man have become iconic. My personal history with this game is an odd one, as I originally played it on the GameCube Collector's Edition, well after having played games like Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. Nevertheless, it's still an awe-inspiring game that really stands apart from most other games of its era, and is no doubt one of the most important games to be released on the NES, if not ever. Number 8. Breath of the Wild. When Breath of the Wild was originally unveiled for release on the Wii U, it, wait for it, took everyone's breath away. And upon release doing it again, was a breath of fresh air for the series. Those horrible puns aside, when I initially purchased my Nintendo Switch shortly after launch with Breath of the Wild, the sheer scale and grandeur of the game was awe-inspiring. The game's gorgeous visuals and epic scale was almost overwhelming at first, particularly after first obtaining the paraglider and leaving the Great Plateau. The seemingly endless amount of exploration in this game is insane, with huge areas to explore and tons of shrines with loads of puzzles to solve. It completely turned the established Zelda formula on its head, and in lieu of obtaining specific weapons in dungeons, the player can collect a slew of different items and weapons throughout the environment to use. Link's Sheikah Slate is also a vital element in the game, allowing him to mark objects on the map and utilize remote bombs and manipulate items. Breath of the Wild proves, in the modern day, that the Legend of Zelda series is as vital and innovative as it was in the beginning. Number 7. Majora's Mask. In many ways the black sheep of the series, Majora's Mask took the basic engine of Ocarina of Time and completely turned it on its head with a darker tone and story, funky time travel elements, and some of the strangest side quests in video game history. This game is just freaking weird, man. I have to be completely honest that this game really turned me off for a long time, as I struggled with it greatly as a kid and just gave up on it. However, having revisited both the original game on the N64 as a Let's Play on this channel, and on my own on the 3DS, I now can say I truly appreciate the game for what it is, even though it's still a bit of an odd one for me. That said, Majora's Mask has its very loyal and rabid fans, including my wife, and rightly so. The side quests, which are largely dictated by triggering events at certain times within the 3-day limit to acquire different items and masks, are very interesting and innovative, and they can be very weird, whether it's saving a farm from an alien invasion or trying to unite two lovers before the end of the world. The different mask transformations are just plain awesome, with my personal favorite being Zora Link. The dark tone and weird atmosphere of this game is unparalleled, and the story is one of the most interesting of the entire series, particularly the Majora's Mask itself and its relationship with the Skull Kid. And that terrifying creepy moon, look at that thing. Such a unique game and a must-play of the series. Number 6, A Link Between Worlds. Such a fun and addictive game. I have a bit of personal connection with this game, as I associate it with a particularly good period of my life, and it being an unexpected gift from my, at the time, friend and future wife. Those fuzzy, nostalgic memories aside, I flew through this game when I first played it, and up to that point, had not had so much fun playing a Zelda game possibly ever. This was a welcome entry in the franchise, as the handheld games on the DS like Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass were a bit of a dip in the series in my opinion. A Link Between Worlds brought a fresh new look and some cool new features to the top-down Zelda formula. In particular, the less linear progression of completing the dungeons, renting or buying items to use like the boomerang and bow, and the ability to merge Link into walls. I love that the map from A Link to the Past was reused for a completely different game, including the Dark World, or Lorule, as it is referred to in this game. A Link Between Worlds looks really great on the 3DS, and up to that point was one of the best Zelda games to be released in years. Truly an essential game for any Zelda fan. Number 5, Link's Awakening. I'm going to go ahead and include both the original Game Boy version and the Switch remake here, as both games are very similar and equally awesome. In terms of the original Game Boy version, as well as the deluxe version for Game Boy Color, it's unquestionably the best handheld Zelda game. The charm of Link's Awakening is in its unique setting, fun story, and combining the top-down action-adventure elements of the original Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past with some of the platforming side-scrolling elements of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. There's tons of other little touches in this game, like all the Mario cameos, the shop owner who owns your thieving ass with lightning when you steal from him, the owl who's just a big hoot, and the overall charm of the characters and scenes that just make this game super memorable. This game also really gets bonus points for me, as being the very first Zelda game that I ever played, and, wait for it again, awakening me to the series for the first time. You're welcome. The Switch version is a perfect remake, recapturing the art style, charm, and overall vibe of the game with enhanced graphics and just a bit more streamlined gameplay. My only real criticism of the remake is that it's so incredibly faithful to the original game that it doesn't really offer anything very different from the original, aside from the aforementioned graphics and perhaps slightly more accessible gameplay. Each version of this game is just stellar, and the most essential handheld Zelda game. Number 4, Twilight Princess. Ah yes, the grown-up Zelda. Largely due to criticism over Wind Waker's graphics, Nintendo really went for the more realistic and grown-up aesthetic for Twilight Princess, mostly to appeal to us ding-dong Westerners who were obsessed with how cool and badass games needed to look during this era rather than, how good the actual gameplay is. That aside, Twilight Princess was a positively spellbinding game graphically when it was released, with its awesome-looking environments and flashy gameplay. Twilight Princess was the first game in the series to be released simultaneously on 2 Nintendo consoles, as the final first-party title for the GameCube and as a launch title for the Wii. I actually played it on the Wii first, which was a much different experience than the GameCube with the motion controls. This, for me, was a really awesome way to first experience the game, as I personally found the motion controls were actually utilized pretty well and had a lot of fun with it. The Wii U HD remaster was also really well done, and made this beautiful game even nicer looking. While the game definitely has a very slow start, it picks up with some awesome dungeons, its dark tone and storyline, and I just love the whole concept of Wolf Link, and Midna might be the best sidekick of the whole franchise. She's such a badass. While not perfect, Twilight Princess is still an amazing Zelda game. Number 3, The Wind Waker. I recall this game getting a ton of flack back in the day on the school bus for being for little kids and just looking stupid. In retrospect, they were incredibly silly criticisms for a game that was so much more than that. Firstly, Wind Waker's cel-shaded graphics and art style were actually really impressive and unique on the GameCube, with lots of color and cool-looking animations. This style looks even more gorgeous with the HD remaster on the Wii U, which just looks so freaking good. All that nonsense aside, Wind Waker is an excellent Zelda game, with a really awesome story that links it directly to Ocarina of Time. I loved sailing the high seas on the King of Red Lions, and the twist involving him was really cool the first time I played it. There's also a lot of really memorable characters, dungeons, and tons of areas to explore. Although the sailing did get a little tedious on the GameCube, as well as collecting the different Triforce shards, the Wii U version largely improved upon these minor frustrations of my childhood. Have I mentioned the music? I could listen to the soundtrack over and over and still not get enough of it. Yes, even that sailing tune that plays on and on and on as you sail. Am I crazy from it yet? Probably. Wind Waker is quite simply a fabulous little game, with tons of personality and quirky charm. A really standout game of the series. Number 2, A Link to the Past. It was really hard not to put this at number 1, as I have often touted A Link to the Past as my very favorite Zelda game. Plus, I'm just a big old sucker for the Super Nintendo in general. It certainly took everything that the original Legend of Zelda did, and both expanded and improved upon it. Everything from the updated 16-bit graphics, which, coupled with the incredible soundtrack, yes, incredible, give it such a warm and cozy feel to it. I absolutely love the dungeons in this game, as well as the overworld and map, and this was the very first Zelda game to truly incorporate a dark and light world, which was such a unique and awesome idea that the series has revisited several times since. Not just that, A Link to the Past innovated in so many ways that echoes of it continue to reverberate throughout the rest of the series, even to this day. Tunes like Zelda's Lullaby or the Hyrule Castle have been reworked, remastered, and re-Zeldified in so many games since, as well as stuff like the Ocarina being used to warp the player to different areas, and many of the more iconic items and weapons were introduced as well. Even locations like Kakariko Village and Hyrule Castle made their debut in A Link to the Past. Aside from all of that, it's a game that, even in 2024, holds up remarkably well, and has loads of replayability with tons of items to collect and secrets to find. A Link to the Past in many ways was the game that defined the Zelda series as we know it today, and is really the gold standard for the franchise. Number 1, Ocarina of Time. If someone were to ask me to sum up the entirety of the Legend of Zelda franchise with one game, I would choose Ocarina of Time in a heartbeat. This game just has it all, and as a kid during the Nintendo 64 era, practically no other game felt so sprawling, epic, and just plain mind-blowing than Ocarina of Time did then. It just has everything that makes a great Zelda game and innovated in so many ways, whether it was the Z targeting system, the huge area of Hyrule Field to explore, and the different locations and the dungeons. The music is some of the most iconic in the series, reworking some tunes from A Link to the Past, as well as some amazing original tunes like The Lost Woods, Gerudo Valley, and of course, all those amazing ocarina melodies that the player learns. The jump in time between young Link and adult Link is also an incredibly cool and original idea that not only widens the scope of the plot, but was such a mind-blowing transition when I first played it. The storyline also feels epic and grand in scale, even having revisited this game in recent years on the channel. I was struck how, for a blocky N64 game, Ocarina of Time still manages to capture such a unique atmosphere and epic feel. The game can even be quite dark and somber at times, with emotional scenes and some surprising revelations. The dungeons are some of the most memorable and challenging of the entire series. Water Temple. and still retains those puzzle-solving elements from previous games. There's also tons of side questing and items to find, which makes truly completing the game a real challenge. I could go on and on about Ocarina of Time, but really, you already knew this, didn't you? Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece, and you all knew this would have to be number 1, right? It's quite simply a hoot! Hey everybody, thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. The Legend of Zelda series is one of the most innovative, enduring, and downright epic series in all of gaming, and there's so much more I could say about it and all of the games both featured on this list and not. Keep an eye out on the future for a full-blown retrospective on the series, which I'm hoping to finally get to soon. Until then, oh, thank you, everyone.